6 o'clock.
It does. Okay.
Whatever one you want to go by.
That one up there.
6 o'clock. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Good evening and welcome to the Creswell Budget Committee meeting for May 2nd, 2022. Would you please stand with me and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so the first thing we need to do is have a roll call. So I will call your name and you will say here, all right? First of all, Dave Stram, here. Kevin Prachu,
Here.
Misty Inman,
Here.
Alonzo Castilla,
Here.
Shelley Clark,
Here.
Tammy Shuck. Tammy is excused tonight with a personal need. Norma Jean Osborne,
Here.
Doug Orton,
Here.
Robert Jackson,
Here.
Stacy Holt,
Here.
Christina Corsi,
Here.
David Nicholson. David is an unexcused absence. Clark Kent. Here. Shaman Mickelson.
Michelson.
Michelson. Very good, okay. So, before we get to number 3, I'm gonna have some comments I want to share. First of all, I want to do some brief intros, because the last 2 years, Budget Committee was on virtual, so this is the first time we've all been together, and it's good to actually all be together in this setting. So we're going to start down here with Shaman Michelson. Just tell us if you're a citizen or a counselor, and how many years you've been serving the city in any capacity you've been serving in.
All right.
Oh, before we do that, there's microphones. You're gonna have to share. I don't think there's enough for everybody, so just, just do like that. Here's the mic. Okay, we
It's
go.
on. Shaman Michelson, citizen, and I believe this is my 6th year on Budget Committee.
Alonzo Castilla, City Councilor, going on my 4th year of serving as councilor.
I think yours is closer. It'll reach. It will. I'm Doug Orton. I'm a citizen, 1st year on Budget Committee.
And they are pretty hot, so just get pointed in the right direction. So Dave Stram, Mayor, and this is now my 10th year on the Budget Committee.
Christina Corsi, and I am a citizen, and this is my 3rd Budget Committee meeting. So I came on in 2020, and my very first was virtual, 1st and 2nd, and now my 3rd is live.
Hello, my name is Shelley Clark, and I serve as a city councilor, and I have been serving for the last 1.5 years as a city councilor.
I am Clark Kent, and this is my 4th year as a citizen on the Budget Committee. It's good to be back in person.
I'm Kevin Prachu, I'm council president, and this would be, I'm into my 4th year as a counselor, but I was on the Budget Committee, I want to say at least 1 year before that. And kind of a funny story because it was my very first meeting, I think, ever as serving in a public setting. And I missed the first Budget Committee meeting if Mayor Stram remembers. And he was probably kind of wondering and trying to figure out what was going on with this guy or whatever. I have not missed a single meeting since then.
Robert Jackson, I am a citizen, and I think this is my 3rd or 4th year, I can't remember, on the Budget Committee.
I am Norma Jean Osborne. This is my first ever budget meeting. I became a city council member this January, and I've been on the Park and Tree Advisory Committee for 3 years.
Okay, so I'm Misty Inman, City Councilor. I have been on the Budget Committee meetings for 5 years and a counselor for over 5 years.
Stacy Holt. This is my first year serving for the city of Creswell, and I did spend, before moving here almost a year ago, I did spend 4 years serving on committee for city of Springfield. Not budget committee though. This will be a first round for me.
Okay, good. So I would encourage you to silence your phones. And I want to have Roberta say a word about public records law, public meetings laws.
Do you want public meetings law or you want public records?
Public records,
Public records?
as it relates to what we're doing here tonight.
Okay. It's okay to take notes, but all the notes that you take that pertain to city business, you get to turn them over to me. They become a public record. We have a retention period and, yep. Anybody that wants to can fill out a public records request and say, I want to see Kevin's notes that he took. And I have to go dig them up and hand them over.
Don't draw any
Stacy.
weird pictures or anything like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to have a copy of our own, or do we also have to file a public records request?
You can have a copy of your own,
Okay.
yeah, but I need the copy of your own too.
Sure, I understand, thank you.
Okay.
And I think what we've done in past years is held on to notes until after the second meeting, which is 2 weeks from tonight, and then turn it all in at one time.
That's correct.
So like on the budget, tonight you're going to get a budget, and in 2 weeks you're going to get another copy of the revised budget. All right? Tonight we get, we get any revisions? That we
Yeah.
put together, okay.
We'll talk about the revisions at the next meeting, if there are any, and you would approve it as amended. And then the city council will get the approved budget at the city council meeting.
Thank you. And I've been remiss to introduce 3 people here tonight. Jim Piper,
Thank you.
our budget officer.
Finance director, Jim Piper. I've been doing this since fiscal year 2016, 2017. So it's a pleasure to serve the city of Creswell in this capacity. Appreciate it. I appreciate y'all giving your time for this as well.
Michelle Amberg.
I'm Michelle Amberg. I'm the city manager. I've been city manager since 2014. And again, just thank you all for coming tonight and for giving us your time and your intelligence as you look through our budget. And I just want to thank you.
And Roberta Tharp.
May 8th, I start my 22nd year with the city.
Wow.
Yes, we're very fortunate. Okay, so I'm going to take my role as mayor, and I already warned Jim and Michelle, I was going to do this, to go over a few things that are about budgeting, because when I first came on the budget, I was overwhelmed the first budget meeting. And I tried to be as well prepared as I could, and it helped a little bit. It was still an overwhelming process, and every year there are more things to learn. So these are my 9 pointers, and I'll go quick. Number 1, ask questions. Okay, as we're going through tonight, as Jim goes through the budget, just please feel free to raise your hand. One of our protocols in council meetings, we raise our hands, as Stacy did a minute ago, and then the mayor or whoever's presiding will call on people one at a time, and it's the presider's role to guard your right to talk from interruptions. So if someone else has a question, you can raise your hand. The presider will keep their eyes both ways and will acknowledge you, but then pull your hand down. So whoever has the floor can continue with their question. So please ask questions. You don't go away tonight saying, you know, I was totally confused on this and this and this and this. Second, and this comes from a booklet that I conferred with Jim today. It's from the Oregon Department of Revenue, and it's called Local Budgeting in Oregon. It says on page 10, all members of the budget committee have the same degree of authority and responsibility. So the way the Creswell budgeting committee is set up is there's 7 counselors and an equal number of citizens, 14. And to approve the budget, it takes 8 votes. So our wonderful city attorney who comes and does training every year to the counselors, we have a council of 7, he routinely says to us, can you count to 4? Because in the procedure we work through, it takes a majority vote to pass the budget. So we all have the same vote. And I just want to encourage you, as citizens, you don't get half a vote to every counselor's 1.5 votes. It's 1 vote per person. So your vote matters just as much. In fact, the very first year I was on the budget, we had a very contentious item on the budget. And we spent quite a good deal of time debating it. And I think that Cliff was probably there and maybe Shelley. Only 2, and Roberta was there. When we came down to deciding what we were going to do on that item, 5 counselors said no. 2 counselors said yes. 1 citizen of the 7 was absent, so there were 6 citizens. 5 said yes, 1 said no. 7-6. The counselors lost. Because the citizens felt so strongly, we needed to do that. Like what we were voting on was to save the Cobalt building. And there was strong commitment at that time, we should sell the Cobalt building, get rid of it. Well, if you know what's happened all those years since, it's become the house for our community food bank and a number of other programs. But that was a very interesting process in which the citizens pulled the weight. So I just encourage you, everybody gets 1 vote and they're all equal. Okay? Number 3, what is the budget committee's main function? And here again is from the booklet, to review, discuss, make additions or deletions, and approve the proposed budget. Upon completions of its deliberations, the committee approves the budget and sets the tax rate or the amount needed to balance the budget. So that's our process. Number 4, ask more questions. After tonight's meeting, we have 2 weeks before the next budget committee meeting. So all those questions you go home with, or if you've read through the budget and things jump out at you, or you think something's missing or it's underfunded, then I encourage you to call, come down in person, email Michelle Amber or Jim Piper and say, I've got questions, 13 of them, or whatever, and come down. They will make time for you, because it's very important that you walk away from this process saying, I understand what I need to understand to make a good decision for my community. Okay? Number 5, can I consult with other budget committee members about details in the budget? Well, I want to throw this in, this is 4B. A huge part of our budget has to do with our facilities. Wastewater facilities, water facilities, roads, airport. If you have questions about those facilities, those public properties that take a lot of dollars, again, please contact Manager Amber and she'll set up a tour for you in the next couple of weeks. So Shelley is here. Shelley's our airport manager. Cliff is our public works director. If you want to have a tour of one of the facilities, please go tour it. Because again, one of our responsibilities is to communicate to our citizens, here's where your tax dollars go, and here's why. So we all become public spokespeople to say to our neighbors, hey, here's why we're spending so much money on that. And I actually went and took a look. And you could too. Number 5, can I consult with other budget committee members about details in the budget other than at budget committee meetings? No. Here's from the book again. Discussion of the budget committee must always take place in the forum of a public meeting. So of the 12 of us that are here tonight, we're strictly forbidden to discuss with one another any items in the budget in the next 2 weeks. However, you can talk to all your neighbors, friends, people who live next door to you. The meeting, what we do has to be held in a public forum. And that's very important. Okay? Number 6. This was, please do talk with citizens. It's our budget. Our budget. Number 7. Can the budget committee add or delete program services? The answer is no. Again, from the book, standards and budget parameters are established by the governing body, which is the city council, and then the budget officer, which is Jim Piper, prepares the budget to reflect the governing body's parameters. So service items in the budget are set by the council. However, the budget committee can add or delete funding for specific services. So if you look at the budget, you think it's underfunded, it's overfunded, you can make recommendations on that and advocate for a change. Can the budget committee, number 8, determine how much an employee is paid? No. You'll see in the budget that all the administrative salaries are set in there, but we don't determine who gets paid what. The budget committee could reduce that total line item or add to it, but we don't determine who gets hired, who gets fired, and who gets paid what. Okay? Number 9, once the budget committee has approved the budget, can the governing body change the budget? This is a very important question because we approve the budget, but then it goes to the city council for adoption. So here's what it says here, I'm just going to read it. It says, the amount of an estimated expenditure for each fund may not be increased more than 10% unless a summary of the revised, I think I'm on the right item.
That sounds right.
Okay. Oh, once we've set the budget, once we've approved it. May not be increased more than 10% unless a summary of the revised budget is again published and another public hearing is held. So if the city council says we want to change that item by more than 10%, within a 10% margin, the city council can change items in the budget. But if the council decides they want to go beyond that, then we have to, in a sense, come back to ground one almost, meet again, hold another public hearing, and this body has to approve that decision. Okay, those are my 9 points. So I just wonder whether there's questions that you might have about the process before we jump right into it. Okay, then we're going to jump right in. And our item number 3 is that we will select a chair and then a vice chair. And the chair will run the meeting from this point on. So at this point, nominations are open for who might be the chair of our budget committee. It can be any one of the people sitting up here, other than Roberta. Norma Jean.
I would like to nominate Shelley Clark.
All right, we have a nomination for Shelley Clark. Do we have other nominations? If not, then we'll close the nominations. Seeing none, the budget committee will now vote. All those in favor of Shelley Clark to be the chair of the budget committee, please raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign, and the motion passes unanimously. So at that point, Shelley, I think I'm just going to pass this to you. And you can lead in the selection of a vice chair and take it away.
All right, well, thank you all, and thank you all for your support. I will now open up the floor to the selection of a vice chair. Is there any nominations?
I will nominate Shaman Michelson.
Excellent. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, I will close. Oh,
I would like to nominate Tammy Shuck. She's not here though, is she?
No,
That's
she's
probably
absent.
not a good idea then.
okay.
I withdraw.
Okay, the motion is withdrawn, or the nomination is withdrawn. All right, are there any other nominations? All right, seeing none, the nomination period is now closed. All of those in favor of selecting Shaman Michelson as the vice chair for the budget committee, please raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign. All right, so by a vote of 12-0, Shaman Michelson has been selected as the vice chair for the budget committee. All right, we'll now move into the approval of the budget committee meeting minutes. We have two meeting minutes from last year to be approved. So they were the meeting minutes from our meeting on May 3rd, and also the budget committee meetings for May 17th of 2021. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the budget committee meeting minutes from last year? And are there any additions, subtractions, anything that needs to be changed?
I don't have additions, subtractions, or anything that needs to be changed, but I do have a question. I was curious why we're approving both meeting minutes. Do you not do approval of the meeting minutes from the first meeting at the next meeting?
We don't. We approve them, yeah, as a group.
Okay, it's interesting. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great question, thank you. And great example of asking questions. Excellent. All right, I would entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes as presented.
I would like to motion that we accept the meeting minutes as presented via email and officially and here. Thank you.
Excellent. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Councilor Inman seconds. All right, so if you are in favor of this motion, please raise your hand. All right, and all those opposed? All right, by a vote of 12-0, motion passes, and our minutes are approved. All right, I will now yield the floor to Finance Director Piper to be able to present or receive the budget message.
Thank you, Chair Clark, and thank you, council and citizen members of the Budget Committee. Before you should have the fiscal year 2022-23 budget. You'll also see the capital improvement plan that will accompany the budget for further analysis on those large capital outlay projects. If you would turn to page 9 in the budget document, we'll start with the budget message. All right, if everyone's ready, I'll begin. Budget message, fiscal year 2022-2023. Enclosed is the proposed budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2022 and ending June 30, 2023, FY 22-23. The budget the budget continues to reflect a cautious outlook for the upcoming fiscal year. The budget has been prepared to satisfy the legal requirements of the State of Oregon budget law, governmental accounting standards, and the City of Creswell financial policies. The City of Creswell continues to provide essential services to our community. These services include policing, municipal court, parks, street maintenance, land use planning, building inspection services, aviation fueling and storage, water treatment and distribution, and wastewater collection and treatment. The financial plan for the city is balanced and is a link between public policy, values, and available resources. Grant funding continues to pour into the city to ensure sanitary water and wastewater are improved and critical transportation infrastructure are maintained. The American Recovery Plan Act will provide one-time funding that must be expended by 2024 with an emphasis to provide critical infrastructure. The proposed fiscal year 22-23 budget includes approximately $1.2 million in funding of a wastewater treatment facility at the Creswell Airport, as there is a disconnect from city services. $5.3 million in grant funding will also be provided to overlay will provide an overlay of the airport runway and construct taxi lanes and utilities for future hangar construction. Finally, grant funding from FEMA will help with the relocation of the water transmission line and seismic retrofitting of the water tanks. The FEMA grants will provide 75% of the project costs that are on the list of priority projects in the Water Master Plan. Controlling expenses continues to be important to the long-term financial health of the city. An important aspect of those expenses is personal services. Wages and benefits are designed to retain employees. Employee turnover can be costly in terms of training and gaining process efficiencies. Last year, employees received a 1.7% cost of living adjustment, or COLA. The prior fiscal year, staff foregone a COLA due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The Consumer Price Index, CPI, continues to climb month over month in all categories. As of March 2022, the CPI Western region was up 8.7% from a year ago. Based on the CPI, a 7% COLA increase is recommended for FY 22-23. The FY 22-23 budget provides the reader with details about goals within the department funds and programs, along with some basic performance measures. A narrative overview is presented on the face page of the fund, followed by the corresponding financial resources and expenditures details on the following page. The actual financial resources, or rather revenues and expenditures for fiscal year 2019-2020 and 2020-2021 are printed in the first two columns, followed by the figures adopted and amended in the 2021-22 budget. The projected 2021-22 column provides additional information about revenues and expenditures for the current fiscal year. The three columns on the right include the proposed, approved, and adopted budget for fiscal year 2022-2023. The FY 22-23 budget is also accompanied by the City of Creswell Capital Improvement Plan, proposed projects and capital improvements for fiscal year 2022-23, also referred to as the CIP. We ask that the Budget Committee review the CIP in conjunction with the FY 22-23 budget. Personal service highlights. Citywide fiscal year 2022-23 personal services will decrease $31,466 over fiscal year 21-22 budget. This was achieved by not filling the planning supervisor position and no rate increases to benefits in fiscal year 2022-23. There is no scheduled increase in rates for medical insurance benefits for fiscal year 22-23. Also, PERS rates will not change again until fiscal year 2023-2024. General fund highlights. The taxable value of all the property within Creswell city limits increased by $12.2 million to a total taxable value of $434.8 million. We estimate the general fund will receive approximately $1.1 million in current year property taxes in fiscal year 2022-2023, an anticipated increase of $76,152. The general fund will make a loan to the Creswell Urban Renewal Agency to purchase right-of-way, as outlined in the Urban Renewal Plan. General fund will transfer reserves to the airport fund to rebuild reserves and help with current operations. For fiscal year 2021-2022, despite an effort to spend down fund balances by nearly $1 million, projected general fund reserves will only be decreased by $168,208. This was due to savings in all departments and a delay in the interfund loan to the Urban Renewal Agency. Also, the building department did not need a transfer due to increased building activity. For fiscal year 2022-2023, general fund reserves are budgeted to be reduced by nearly $780,000. Any fund balance reserves will meet the minimum requirements established by city fiscal policy. Operating contingency will meet the minimum requirements established by city fiscal policy. Combined ending fund balance and operating contingencies exceed $1.3 million, or 180 days of the budgeted operating expenses. General fund revenue estimates for fiscal year 2022-2023 indicate approximately a $338,000 or 12% decrease over fiscal year 2021-2022. This is due primarily to grant revenues. After factoring out the grants, revenues will increase approximately $160,000 or 5.7% compared to fiscal year 21-2022. The increase is due to utility franchise fees, property taxes, and the increase in the public safety fee. This year, the city anticipates another 10 to 15% cost increase in insurance coverage for property and liability. According to the City County Insurance Services, CIS, the cost increase is not only due to the rate increases, the cost increase is also affected by the recent increases in valuation of property. The FY 2023 budget continues to reflect the City Council policy decisions to reduce the fund balance reserves, to provide improved economic development opportunities. Operating contingency reserves continue to meet the minimum requirements established by city fiscal policy. Administration. An entrepreneur community, EIC, will be contracted again to help businesses recover from the economic impacts of the pandemic. Culture and recreation, materials and services increased $13,820 over the prior fiscal year. Utility and the fuel costs are the main driver of these cost increases. Public safety, the assistant city recorder court clerk position has been reclassified to building permit tech court clerk. This classification reflects the time that will be spent in these departments in fiscal year 2022-2023 for this position. Contractual services, police protection will increase $52,017 compared to the prior fiscal year. The cost increase is due to rising costs at the county. A rate increase of $1.67 in the public safety fee is recommended for fiscal year 2022-2023. Planning and land use. The Community Development Block Grant CDBG program are expected to be completed in the fiscal year 2021-2022. Contractual services planning, economic development, to contract the Lane Council of Governments, LCOG, to update Creswell Economic Development Plan is also expected to be completed in fiscal year 2021-2022. The planning supervisor position will not be filled in fiscal year 2022-2023. The permit specialist has been promoted to planner and will continue to carry on the planning function of the city. Street fund. In fiscal year 2022-2023, a transfer of $120,000 is proposed to continue funding the Street Capital Improvement Reserve Fund. Also, a chip seal project on Emerald Parkway is budgeted at $150,000. Grant funding totaling $82,660 received in the prior fiscal year will be used to cover part of the cost of this project. Ending fund balance reserves and contingency meet the minimum requirements established by city fiscal policy. Bicycle Footpath Fund, revenues in this fund have been transferred from the street fund to finance ongoing bicycle lane striping projects. These projects will continue this fiscal year. Building Department Fund, building and electrical permit fees are proposed to increase 3% in fiscal year 2022-23. Revenues are proposed to increase $2,936 collectively. Building activity in fiscal year 2022-2023 is still slow due to the lack of affordable building land and within the current urban growth boundary. Materials and services are proposed to increase $4,741 in fiscal year 2022-2023. This is due to an increase in the contract with the City of Cottage Grove to provide building inspection services. Ending fund balance reserves and contingency meet the minimum requirements established by city fiscal policy. Water Fund. The Water Fund contains federally and state mandated programs. It is necessary that the utility rates are structured to ensure that funds are available to pay for operating expenses, ongoing capital needs, and debt service obligations. Materials and services are proposed to increase $39,442 or 8.2% in fiscal year 2022-2023. This is due to rising costs in chemicals, materials, fuel, and electricity. During the Water Rate Advisory Committee meeting in January 2022, it was noted that CPI was up 7.7% and that Social Security benefits have been increased by 5.9%. Further, Lynn County is committed to providing low-income water utility assistance to residents of Creswell in the total amount of $75,000 over the next 3 fiscal years, 2022 to 2024. A water rate recommendation of 4% is recommended for fiscal year 2022-2023 by the Water Rate Advisory Committee. Transfers of $413,920 are being made to the Water Capital Improvement Fund in fiscal year 2022-2023 for current and future capital improvement plans. Debt service reserves meet requirements set by lenders. Ending fund balance reserves and contingency meets the minimum requirements established by city fiscal policies. Sewer fund. The sewer fund is currently reserving funds to address the wastewater treatment facility. The current facility is not able to comply with the Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ, standards for discharge into the tributary because of water temperatures. An upgraded wastewater treatment facility is estimated to cost $15 million or more soon. The plan is to pay off the current debt service and have at least $2 million in reserves, then issue new debt service to complete the upgraded wastewater facility. A sewer rate increase of 5% was recommended for fiscal year 2022-2023 by the Water Rate Advisory Committee. Transfers of $360,263 are being made to the Sewer Capital Improvement Fund in fiscal year 2022-2023. A wastewater treatment facility will be installed at the airport to serve businesses, both current and future. The funding for the project will come from American Recovery Plan Act grant monies. A debt service reserve of $104,840 in fiscal year 2022-2023 ensures adequate reserves set aside for debt service obligations for the following year. Ending debt service reserves meet the requirements set by lenders. Ending fund balance reserves and contingency meet the minimum requirements established by city fiscal policy. Airport fund. Grant awards for construction of the runway overlay project and construction of new taxi lanes and utilities for hangar construction are budgeted at $5.3 million in fiscal year 2022-2023. The airport runway will be shut down for approximately 45 days. Revenue losses from rents and fuel cells will necessitate a transfer from the general fund. However, the city's match requirements for the grants will be paid by the Connect Oregon grant. Wastewater facilities will be installed at the airport in fiscal year 2022-2023. The additional facilities will likely attract more private development at the airport. Ending fund balance reserves and contingency meet the minimum requirements established by city fiscal policy. Local Improvement District. The city transferred the funds to the street fund in fiscal year 2021-22 as LID number 15 was completed. There are no local improvement districts planned for fiscal year 2022-2023. Capital Improvement Fund. A new reader board display on City Hall is budgeted in fiscal year 2022-2023. A recent letter from the manufacturer stated that the current reader board is no longer supported and parts will no longer be made available. Water and Capital Improvement Reserve Fund. Water capital improvement for 2022-2023 includes radio meters, rack modules for the plant, engineering for the transmission line relocation, and seismic retrofitting for the water tanks, and an arsenic removal study. Sewer Capital Improvement Reserve Funds. Sewer capital improvements for 2022-2023 are budgeted in the sewer fund, where grant monies will be received for a wastewater facility at the airport. Street Capital Improvement Reserve Funds. Street capital improvements for fiscal year 2022-2023 include chip sealing Emerald Parkway. These expenditures are budgeted in the street fund, where grant monies were received. STC Reserve Funds. The system development charges, STCs, account for revenues and expenditures for projects associated with development of residential and commercial properties, growth in the community. As the economy continues to improve, revenues in these funds will increase. System development charges are held in reserve for projects in accordance with Oregon Revised Statutes, ORS Chapter 223, and can only be expended for purposes specifically outlined in ORS 223.307. In fiscal year 2022-2023, expenditures for improvement at South 2nd Street Park and a master plan for Garden Lake Park are budgeted at approximately $433,000. Acknowledgements, we'd like to thank the residents of Creswell for putting your trust in your local government leadership and providing your input as community members as the City Council makes policy decisions to help improve the livability of our community. We'd also like to extend special thanks to the Creswell professional staff for their efforts in researching and providing financial information and for preparation of the budget. Lastly, we'd like to thank the City Council and citizen members of the Budget Committee for your support and willingness to serve your community. It is an honor to work with professionals and skilled city employees and community volunteers to develop and implement the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget, respectfully submitted by myself and Manager Amber.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Would you like a glass of water?
You can see there's a lot of things happening next fiscal year. Some of it is carryover from this fiscal year as things get pushed back, not always by the city, but by developers or schedules outside of our control.
All right, I'll now again yield the floor back to you for the presentation, the overview of the proposed FY 2022-2023 budget. I also encourage you to take water with you.
Right. Well, this won't be so dry. This has got lots of visual aids, so hence the presentation on the screens here. So, welcome to Creswell, a friendly city. I love that picture. I love the sign that you see when you enter the city. So here is a pie chart of all our beginning fund balances. And as you can see, the majority is SDCs and capital project funds, and all those dollars go into our projects. SDCs, as I referred to the ORSs in the budget message, in lay terms, can only be spent on projects that create additional capacity. So we really have to wait until there's a new project. We are going to start a new park, right? 2nd Street will add some amenities, and those are capacity improvements that can utilize those SDC funds. But for the most part, they sit there until we have a project that we can use those on. Capital project funds are reserves that we're putting away for future projects. Those are usually in our master plans. In fact, they should all be in our master plans. And we know that they're coming down the line, hence the CIP that I handed out. It shows you this year's capital expenditures, but also projects out 5 years or more so that you can see what's coming down the line. And then you have fund balances from the other funds. These are basically carryovers from the prior year, funds that weren't expended. We do keep a reserve fund balance by fiscal policy that we have at least some monies in reserve in case monies don't come in at the beginning of the fiscal year as planned. And so, as I said, beginning fund balances consist of monies carried over from the prior fiscal year. And we have $16.2 million in beginning fund balance. And of that, SDCs are $7.6 million. The general fund, you'll see a decrease in ending fund balance of approximately $780,000. Those are due to one-time investments and contingency. Contingency is this thing we have to keep in case something out of our control happens down the line. As Mayor Stram had pointed out, that we can change the budget by 10%, but we can only do that by having contingency reserves. So that line will be increased and it'll be moved out of contingency. The likelihood is that contingency will roll over into ending fund balance after all is said and done at the end of the fiscal year if we have nothing that comes up during the fiscal year. We also have a $175,000 transfer to the airport fund and 300 capital project funds. This includes City Hall, water, sewer, streets. Seeing an increase in ending fund balance of $151,183. That's to replace the reader board sign, the arsenic removal, and the radio meters that we talked about in the budget message. So rack modules for the water treatment plant, transmission line relocate, and then we have the water tank seismic retrofit. But in those funds, we also have $994,183 transferred in from water, sewer, the street fund, and then about $18,900 in interest earned. SDC funds are going to decrease $169,060, and then that's because of those improvements at the Second Street Park and the Government's Park Master Plan. General fund program requirements are $2.4 million. As you can see, it breaks down into 50% of that is public safety, 27% of planning, 15% for administration, and 14% into culture and recreation. Property tax revenues, as discussed in the letter, budget message, 1.1 million. And you can see the real market and assessed value comparisons, pretty consistent, increasing year over year. Franchise fees, $366,000. A little decent bump in Pacific Power, and that's due to the rate increases. So franchise fees are based on a percentage of revenue received, and we received a notice that they're projecting to raise rates by 13% over the prior fiscal year. So it's going to be a big bump in franchise fees as their revenues increase. Other general fund revenues include intergovernmental revenues, the liquor, cigarette tax, state shared revenues, $178,067. Hotel tax, hotel, motel, and telecom, $125,000. And I'm happy to say that the motel tax is on the rise, getting back to normal, with occupancy being more like pre-pandemic. Public safety fee of $504,898. Rural tourism marketing program, we're estimating about $25,000 coming in from that. That's the county's room taxes, and then they share it with the local area to promote tourism. Court fines, fees, and penalties, $31,500. License and permits, $11,220, and then interest of $16,000. Just a general overview of general fund programs. Personal services are going to decrease $93,346 in fiscal year 2022-23. We talked about the 7% COLA, but we were also not filling the planning supervisor position, and there's, the benefits are kind of frozen this year. There's no increases in those, so it ended up being a decrease in personal costs. Materials and services are going to decrease by $260,963. Even though we have that $52,000 increase in the Lynn County, I did that backwards, LCSO, Lynn County Sheriff's Office contract. But we have all these grants that are going away this year. The American Rescue Plan Act funds that we received, that we had in the prior year in the general fund, those won't be here in fiscal year 2022-23. The economic development plan is going to be completed. The DLC, Department of Land Conservation and Development Planning Assistant Grant will be completed this fiscal year. You won't see that next year, and the strategic plan won't be in the 2022-23 budget. Street fund, highway use user revenues, that's the state fuel tax and the vehicle registration fees that the city receives based on population. But as you see, we had a nice little bump in 21-22, and the state of Oregon is projecting a little bit of a decrease this year, which shouldn't be a continued trend, but I think we just had a really good 21-22 fiscal year. Personal services increased $11,388 in this particular fund. And that's primarily because of the COLA. There weren't any there weren't any staffing changes in this fund, so that's purely from the COLA. Materials and services are going to decrease. Although we have an increase of $5,125 increase in gas and oil, but we don't have the stormwater master plan in the next fiscal year, so that's why we have that decrease. Bicycle footpath, again, we continue to spend money on striping. We're required to take 1% of the state highway, street highway use fund. And by ORS, you have to spend it 1% on pedestrian and bicycle footpaths. So this is a continuing project that we do to spend those monies down. The building department fund, building permit activity since 2011, 2012 has been steadily increasing. There was a dip in new residential after 17, 18, and that really has to do with the buildable land. But in 2021, we're seeing a little bit of a bump there. I guess the developers are finding ways to get more land incorporated in the city and build some smaller developments. Personal services increased to $7,682 in fiscal year 2022-2023, and that's those personnel changes. So we had an assistant city recorder that's being reclassified now to a building permit technician, and there's more time that's needed there, especially with the more activity that we've had in the last fiscal year.
Can I ask a question at this point or after?
I'm okay with the question now. But
Is it okay? Okay.
yeah, sure.
Does the change to the new job, is that going to also get a COLA?
Yes.
Are you proposing that also gets a COLA? Okay.
Yeah,
thank you.
every person, every employee gets the same COLA across the board. Yeah, great question. The materials and service increase of $2,741 is contractual costs of the city of Cottage Grove to provide inspection services. They too are going to have a COLA in the 7% range, so their charges to us are going to go up accordingly. Water fund, personal services and material services for fiscal year 2022-2023 equals $1.2 million. It's an increase of 4.9% over the prior year, and there's no change in debt service fiscal year 2022-2023. There is a $387,504 increase in ending fund balance, and that's because of $372,113 in grant proceeds. And the transfers equal the audited revenues over expenditures before transfers amount of $413,920. That will go into the reserve fund for future capital projects. And you'll see in the CIP plan, we track over the 5-year period reserve fund balance and how that's affected year over year. And it should be helpful in seeing where those reserves are going, those big ticket items that we're saving for. Sewer fund, personal services and materials and services for fiscal year 2022-2023 equals $1.03 million. It's an increase of $9,155, or only at 1.1% over prior year. Personnel changes helped reduce the effects of the COLA, and we had a cost increase of 11% the prior fiscal year. So this is kind of just smoothing that out this fiscal year. Well, there's no change in debt service for fiscal year 2022-2023. There's a $33,205 decrease in ending fund balance, and like I mentioned, the $150,000 due to contingency will likely roll back over into fund balance. $1.23 million in capital outlay is funded by the ARPA grant. In transfers, equal the audited revenues and expenditure over expenditures before transfers, $360,263 going to the sewer capital reserve. Airport fund, personal services and material services for fiscal year 2021-22 equals $420,054. It's an increase of $19,878 or 4.7% over the prior year. And this is strictly due to COLA. There weren't any personnel changes in this fund. The runway overlay project, $4.9 million, 100% funded by the FAA and ODA grants. So kudos to our funders and to Manager Humble, who works hard and diligently to get those funds in to pay for these expensive infrastructure projects at the airport. Also, we're going to receive $450,000 in grants for taxi lanes and utilities for future new hangar construction. This was kind of an obstacle. In the prior years, we were trying to build hangars, but we soon found out we need the taxi lanes and the utilities in place to do those hangar construction projects. So you'll see those in the near future once we get the infrastructure in place. Installation of wastewater facility at Hobby Field, funded by grant funds in the sewer fund, will improve the economic opportunities at the airport. We have a $2,010 decrease in ending fund balance. Again, $65,000 due to contingency. And we have those interfund loans that paid back to the general fund of $17,411. Those were to buy hangars over time that became available, and we can charge rent for them to pay those interfund funds. All right, hopefully I didn't go too fast. Are there any questions? That's like the 20,000-foot view of the budget, right?
So apparently I asked you.
Yes, please.
I asked you early already once, but I have one more question. That state highway user revenues, you mentioned that they expect that to come down in the 2022-2023. Do you know what they are saying is driving that expected trend, or?
I think it's just driven by use. So as fuel costs go up, people are a little more hesitant to go out and drive.
Maybe the remote work too, and okay.
Yeah, and remote work is definitely.
I just was curious if there was anything actually mentioned, so.
Yeah, no, great question. I'm sure all of those things impact it.
So let the floor is open in case there are any questions for Director Piper. Member Holt?
Sorry. Do you know what the sort of standard or average COLA is in the state of Oregon?
We have done some surveys. Some jurisdictions are doing close to 7, and others, through contract negotiations, are sticking with their previously negotiated rates. So let's say they negotiated last year for 3% for the next 2 years. Well, they're kind of stuck for now, but I have a feeling that those will catch up to them.
Are these surveys just with city governments and things like that?
Yeah,
And we're
city
not talking about the
reporters.
average layperson?
Right. Yeah, this is just purely government.
Thank you.
I really appreciate all the questions that you're asking.
I have more, but I'll try to save them for next time.
I think this is also an excellent time to ask questions, so if you have them. Yeah.
I was just curious, when you talk about ending balances and contingencies, that there's a minimum set by Oregon fiscal policy. Do you try to keep it close to the minimum, or do you just, you just need to meet that one goal, however much it is, beyond that is fine? I'm just wondering how this gets planned.
That's a great question. Yeah, we keep it at the 15% minimum requirement. We don't exceed that because there's really no reason to expect more than that. If it becomes more than that, then as Mayor Stramon mentioned earlier, then we have to go out and publish a whole new budget and have a public hearing and go through this whole process again to go beyond that 10% change at the expenditure line. Yeah.
Bicycle footpath, the $3,200 annual striping and maintenance, you said that largely eats up the funding? So there's no rollover usually?
There's rollover.
I did see you have to spend it in a 10-year time, but that's from when you receive, so that also rolls, correct?
Right. So we try to keep that that going. One thing that'll come into play is if we do a street project, we can use some of that funding to pay for like the bicycle lane of that street, which is very helpful. We did that a couple of years back with A Street, and we spent down $40,000 of that line item, which helped.
Councilor Castillo?
I'm just curious on the, I'm sure we need it, or whatever it is, with the $496,000 for the water tanks, the seismic retrofit. What is that? What's the seismic retrofit?
You know, I defer that question to our technical public works guy back here who would know more. I can give you the quick, but he would know the
Very
details.
quick, yeah, just.
Yeah, it's just a earthquake event construction that would anchor the tanks down there. Right now, they're free floating on a concrete base, and they were built in the 70s, and so they would not withstand like a Cascadia event. And the state is really driving for all water and sewer infrastructure to be seismically retrofit. And right now, there's quite a bit of grant funding available for that. And so we're in the middle of applying for that grant. Hopefully it will be funded.
Thank you, Chris.
I admittingly don't know much about the wastewater treatment plant at the airport, but was curious, is that a treatment plant that will benefit the entire community or just the airport?
That will just operate at the airport for the businesses and the hangars that are there and the main office building. Right now, there's, correct me if I'm wrong, Shelley, but there's 2 septic systems out there.
There are 2 septic systems.
Yeah, and we just put a lot of money in, well, not a lot of money, but we did have to repair the one at the FBO, the main office building. And it's also, when we talk to developers, it's also a hindrance to developing on the airports, and we're kind of blocked in there. We can't connect to Emerald Valley wastewater on the east side currently. They can't accept any more connections. And to connect to the city system, we have to go under the freeway, which is very costly.
There is no sewer or water at the airport right now.
Can you talk a little bit about the public safety fee? What it is right now, what it's projected to go to, how many deputies we get by it?
Sure.
And what page we might find it at on the budget?
That's a great question. I'm pretty sure it's on the public safety divider page. Let's look at page 46. All right, I apologize, it's not there. It's on page 40 in the revenues for the general fund. Sorry. 46 is the expenditures, 40 is the revenues. And so the public safety fee, it pays for 4 well, it pays for 2 deputies. We have 4 deputies in total, and a full-time sergeant. When I first came on here, I think we had a half-time sergeant who was splitting time between here and Benita.
We had a third of a sergeant
Third of a sergeant.
before the public safety fee. They were splitting time between Benita, Creswell, and
Marine.
the Marine, yeah.
Oh. Yeah, when we switched to a full-time sergeant, we saw some notable increases in coverage within the city as far as beyond just traffic citations. There was the ability now to do investigations and some detective work within the city limits. That 4th deputy brought coverage up to an acceptable level of almost 24/7 policing. Prior to that, I think we were missing a day or possibly more in the coverage every week. So now we see a deputy on Fridays.
Is there any possibility of increasing?
Excuse me.
Oh,
So,
sorry.
my question hadn't been fully answered. What is the public safety fee currently, and what's it projected to go to?
I'm sorry, Mayor Stram, yes, you asked that. The current public safety fee is $15.33. $1.67 increase will take it to $17 even. That's a monthly fee added, it'll be on the utility bill each month.
Thank you.
Councilor Osborne, I think you had a question?
Is there any possibility of adding another officer in the near future? And have we figured out how to pay for that?
Yeah, we haven't figured out how to pay for an additional deputy. It would be over $100,000 for a new deputy, so we have to figure that out.
Member Orton?
How much was that increase this year on the public safety fee?
$1.67.
Thank you.
Member Holt?
I was going to say that the proposed increase for sewer would also be on that same bill, right? So, okay. Just wanted to clarify that.
Mayor Stram?
So could you also talk about community contributions and where that goes and what it's used for, page 45?
Good question. So the community contributions, the city provides those funds to Creswell First, an organization that helps other nonprofit organizations through difficult times. And they provide grants through this funding that we provide them. Last year, I believe it was $19,000, and this year we're upping that budget by $1,000.
And the money comes from?
Oh, very good question. Yes, and the money comes from state shared revenues, so the alcohol and cigarette taxes that we receive at the city.
Mayor Stram?
How about the same page, tourism, page 45? Where it goes and what it does.
Sure, so tourism funds come from the hotel motel tax or transient room tax, TRT. And so those are collected at the county level, and then they're remitted to the city of Creswell. And of those funds, 70% are by ORSs are supposed to be spent on tourism activities. So essentially getting more people to come to the city and stay in hotels, which keeps the tax roll going for transient room tax. Those projects are mainly done by the Creswell Chamber of Commerce. We have a contract with them to do those projects. And our biggest one, of course, is the 4th of July. That draws a lot of people to the city of Creswell. And the citywide yard sale is another one, for example.
And the winter.
And the Winter Festival, yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Great.
Councilor Castillo?
And in your opening statement, Jim, you mentioned on the EIC that will be contracted again. Where do I find that?
Good question. That's in administration on page 43, Economic Improvement Development. It's the very last item under Materials and Services.
And they will be contracted again. And do we know, are the businesses getting their money's worth out of it? Are they happy with this contract?
This person is a mentor to new business startups as well as mentoring individual businesses on money matters and how to track and do payroll and things like that, things that maybe a first-time business owner wouldn't know how to do. So how to do your taxes, how to figure out your profits, how to do those sorts of things. That's what this person does. And we had an excellent one, and that person stepped down. And so for the last 3 months of this year, we don't have one and we're not being charged for it. But we would like to start it back up next year because it is a very valuable resource to small business owners. It's not necessarily something a large business would use.
And this is totally separate from RAIN?
This is part of RAIN.
Oh, it is part of RAIN?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Floor is open if there's any more questions. Mayor Strand? I'm assuming you have a question since you...
I was pushing yes. Where do we find the water and sewer increases here? And what will that be as it's passed on to individuals and businesses? I know we got the total number, but the actual percentage, I think that was covered, but I...
11 mentioned it.
It's on page 11 for the water fund and page 12 for the sewer fund.
Correct. It's in
Of the budget message.
So page 12 says the water rate increased 4% and sewer rate 5%.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Mayor Strand?
I have a question on page 12 about the word soon. It says an upgrade to the wastewater treatment facility is estimated to cost $15 million or more soon.
Yes.
Are we planning to replace our wastewater facility?
That is the plan. That's going to be a requirement made by the DEQ. We do have to do some more master plan work.
It's not necessarily a complete replacement, though. It's an augmentation of what we have.
Okay.
In order to meet the regulations that we are under. Right now, Cliff is working with the DEQ on our permit, and we are out of compliance in 2 areas. One, and Cliff can tell you much more specifically what those 2 areas are. But we're going to need to add additional technology to our plants in order to meet the requirements for discharge into the tributary that we discharge into.
Do we have a timeline of when we're hoping to do it and what it will cost us and how we're gonna fund it?
We're working on that with the DEQ right now.
So in the meantime, we're setting money aside
Yes.
aggressively, knowing it's coming.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
I wouldn't say aggressively, I'd say prudently.
Okay.
Right.
Good, thank you.
Aggressively might sound like we're charging too much for wastewater services. We're not, but we are putting money aside into reserves for the day when we do have to start looking at a new plant. The new plant probably, though, will be covered by a low-interest loan from the state, just like all of the other plans have been.
Oh, which gives me another question. How close are we to paying off we still have debts on, and that's in here, right, near the end? It covers
There's
debts.
debt service in the end.
Can you point us to that page? I always like to see how we're doing. Getting those debts paid down.
So the debt summary begins on page 98 and continues on 99. Yeah, we're getting pretty close to paying off the sewer treatment plant. At the end of this fiscal year, we're looking at $441,349 is what's left on the sewer treatment plant.
Where's that number at exactly?
Page 98.
Oh, right there.
Revenue bonds, sewer treatment plant. And each year, as you can see on page 99, we're paying $104,840 on that, I believe is the number. And 86,000 is gonna knock down the principal to $355,266. So we're getting closer to paying down that loan. And there was another loan with the wastewater that was paid off in the prior fiscal year, or year before that, so, sorry. So, we're getting close to paying off that debt service in the sewer fund.
And how about water?
Water, we're a little further out. We're roughly at the end of fiscal year 2023. We've got about $2 million left to pay on that.
Member Holt, I think you had a question?
Yeah, a little bit of a statement and a question. So I'm curious, actually, I'll ask the question. I'm curious, once those debts are paid down, will the citizens benefit from that by seeing lower rates?
With the sewer treatment, that's gonna be, we're just gonna exchange the debt service. And with the water operating fund, I would hope that we'd see improvement. I think we're looking at 2035 I don't have it in front of me, but it seems like we're still 10 years out from paying that off. So it's gonna be there for a while.
And is there, what committee is in charge of structuring how water is billed?
How water is billed?
Yeah, because I'm a single woman living in a home in Creswell, a very small home. I do 1 load of laundry a week, 1 load of dishes every 2 weeks, very little water use, and I pay the same as a family of 4. I pay the same minimum charge. And just during all of this, everybody's, experiencing the same inflation, and it just seems like a horrible time to raise rates again. And so I'm just curious, that's why I asked the question, because I'm curious, is there a benefit for the city paying off these bills, like to the residents of the city ever? Or does it just transfer? That's kind of where I was going with that.
We have, according to our charter has a statement in it that we cannot charge more than it costs to actually produce water. And that is reviewed every year by a water advisory board. So the water rates are set based on what the charter says. what the charter says and the water rate advisory.
Sure, I understand that, and that's common sense. I just was curious who I would talk to about restructuring how it's billed to be more fair to people that don't use it as much, that get charged the same.
I see, okay.
Yeah, that's a fair question.
Any additional questions? These are fantastic. I encourage them to keep going.
I do have a question. As we increase the amount of housing in town, which will be over the next 20 years, I guess, is the plan, will we need to add an additional water tank, storage tank?
Yeah, our master plan speaks to capacity, and mostly it addresses fire, because that's where the capacity really is built off from. But as we grow, it's about a 20-year span where we will need an additional reservoir, correct? But for about the next 17 years, our plan identifies that we will have enough storage.
Any additional questions? Going once, going twice. Sold for questions. All right, having no additional questions, I'll now close the time for questions. And I will ask,
I just want to point out that my email address is up there for everybody to ask questions. Please email me those questions. And what I'd like to do is put together a question and answers document throughout the 2-week period. And I'll post that online. That way everybody has the opportunity to see the questions and get the same answers. So I won't respond in email because we don't want to have like this series of emails and create a public meeting, which would, make my city recorder very upset. So I will answer that in a document that I'll post on the website so that, and send you a link so that y'all can find it.
excellent, thank you very much. All right. So I will close the question and answer time, and I will turn to Roberta and ask if there's been any public comment on the proposed budget and possible uses of state revenue sharing.
I have not received any.
All right, and that is our final agenda item for the evening, and so I declare this meeting closed at 7:22 p.m.
Good morning, remind everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Good job.
Oh, before we go, I'm so sorry. I would like to remind you all of the next meeting that will be happening May 16th.
2 weeks.
2 weeks from now, starting at 6 p.m. Here in this very room. Thank you very much.
We'll talk to each other for 2 weeks.
Hey, do you want me to run to the ladies' room really quick? I'll be right back.
We can still talk about running, whatever.
Yeah, that's always an on topic.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Just scheduled at 5, so that's going to happen.
Feel free. You could use it. I don't know how much noise that would be.
I turned the microphone off, so I think we're good.
That'll be famous thing.
Good question. Huh? Good question. Jill or Jim could answer that one.
Well, I'll just say